My mother didn't just yell at me. She delivered a verdict. You have 48 hours to get your things out. That house is your sister's now. No warning, no explanation, just a sentence sharp enough to split the air. I remember staring at her, waiting for a punchline that never came. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply went quiet. The kind of quiet that makes people uneasy because they don't know what's coming next. And 2 days later, when my sister walked through that same doorway, she realized silence could be far more dangerous than rage. I grew up in that house. Every creak of the floor, every fading photograph on the walls, every chipped corner of the banister carried a piece of my childhood. To most people, it looked like a normal family home. To me, it was a maze built from expectations. If you walked in on any given morning, you'd hear the hum of the old coffee maker my dad refused to replace, and smell the lavender cleaner my mom used on every surface, as if she could scrub chaos into obedience. I was the oldest, which in my family didn't mean leader. It meant default problem solver. Since I was 16, every document, every fine, every confusing letter in the mail somehow ended up on my desk. Mom called it being responsible. Dad called it having a good head. What they really meant was, we don't want to deal with this, give it to Megan. And because I wanted to belong, I kept doing it. Then there was Chloe. My sister floated through life the way glitter floats in the air. Bright, pretty, and impossible not to notice. Mom adored her. Dad bragged about her wellness brand to anyone who would listen. Even though Chloe lived on borrowed money and borrowed optimism, if I ever pointed out the imbalance, Mom's glare made it clear I was the jealous one for daring to want fairness. The house reflected that same unspoken hierarchy. Chloe's room was twice the size of mine, painted in soft cream with curtains she picked out on a shopping trip Mom took her on. My room still had the same faded blue paint from middle school. I didn't complain. I learned early that complaining didn't change anything. It only made Mom sigh dramatically and ask why I couldn't just be happy for my sister. Still, the house was the closest thing I had to stability. I came home to it after long days at the office, hung my jacket on the same hook I had used since high school, and let the quiet settle around me like a blanket. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine in the way memories make something yours. So when Mom shouted that the house belonged to Chloe, it wasn't just property she was handing away. It was my entire history, tossed aside as if she were rearranging furniture. But the truth is, I should have seen it coming. The comments, the decisions made without me, the way Chloe spoke about future plans like she already owned the place. Looking back, the signs weren't subtle. They were flashing. I just didn't realize how close they were to becoming a reality until the morning everything snapped. The shift didn't happen overnight. It arrived in pieces, small, forgettable on their own, but unmistakable when put together. Mom started referring to the house as our future investment. Dad talked about streamlining responsibilities, which somehow always meant giving more to me and less to Chloe. And Chloe, with her endless vision boards and sunlit selfies, began filming in rooms she never used before, casually telling her followers, "One day, this entire space will be transformed. One day." She said it like a promise or a claim. At first, I brushed it off. Chloe always exaggerated. But then I noticed the documents left on the dining table, papers about property taxes, home valuation notes scribbled in Mom's handwriting, a list of renovation ideas with Chloe's signature loops on the margins. When I walked in one night after work, all three of them fell silent in a way that wasn't casual. Mom folded the papers too quickly. Dad cleared his throat. Chloe flashed a smile too bright to be real. "We were just discussing possibilities," Mom said. "Possibilities for what?" I asked. She waved a hand dismissively. "Grown-up things. Don't worry about it." That was her favorite way to minimize me, turn adulthood into a club I apparently wasn't allowed into, despite being the one who handled every legal and financial mess the family ever created. The tension seeped into the walls. Chloe began suggesting updates she wanted to make. Mom started rearranging furniture without asking. One afternoon, I came home to find Chloe filming yet another wellness video in the living room, claiming she had big plans for the property. When I confronted her afterward, she shrugged. "Relax, Meg. You get so attached to things. This house has potential." "It's Mom and Dad's house," I corrected. Chloe smiled. "Is it?" The way she said it made my stomach tighten. But the turning point came on a morning so ordinary it made the impact worse. I was leaving for work when I found an envelope slipped under my bedroom door. Inside was a printed schedule. Chloe's schedule for hosting clients, filming sessions, and energy retreats. All in our house. All without asking me. At the bottom, in Mom's handwriting, were the words, "We'll adjust your room soon." Adjust. As if my space was a piece on a chessboard they could just shove aside. That night, I confronted Mom. Why is Chloe planning events here? Why is she talking like she owns the place? Mom didn't look up from her cup of tea. She needs space for her business. She contributes to the family in her own way. And I don't? She finally met my eyes. "You're stable. You don't need as much." There it was, the sentence that sliced through years of buried resentment. In their minds, my reliability made me expendable. That was the moment everything snapped. The moment I realized this wasn't miscommunication or favoritism. It was a plan, and I wasn't part of it. The breaking point came 2 mornings later, though the day started like any other. I walked downstairs expecting the usual clatter of dishes and the faint smell of Mom's lavender cleaner. Instead, I found all my belongings, clothes, books, framed photos, stacked in boxes by the front door. Chloe stood nearby, recording a video with her ring light, narrating some speech about new beginnings and embracing the next chapter. My next chapter apparently didn't include a place to sleep. Before I could speak, Mom emerged from the kitchen. She didn't look startled or guilty. She looked prepared, as if she had rehearsed what came next. "You have 48 hours to get your stuff out. That house is your sister's now." It should have shattered me, but instead, something inside me went quiet. So quiet, it scared even me. I didn't shout. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind her of the years I spent fixing their taxes, drafting their agreements, sorting every bill. I simply stared at the boxes, then at Chloe's satisfied smile, and felt something click into place. I didn't argue. I just stayed silent and prepared. I went upstairs, closed my door, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. If they wanted me gone so badly, fine. But I wasn't going to walk away without understanding what they had done. I opened my laptop and pulled up the property records I had helped Dad sort months earlier. Back then, he claimed he needed help organizing. Now, the pieces connected too neatly. Transfers, signatures, notes written in Mom's handwriting, discussions about timing, documents Chloe had no business having access to. The house was still legally theirs, but everything pointed toward a transfer they had been planning long before they told me. I scrolled further, my pulse rising, when I found correspondence Chloe had drafted, emails proposing renovations, partnership deals, and even filings I recognized from my work in the legal field. She wasn't imagining taking over the house. She had already built her future on it, without me. I took pictures, downloaded records, and saved everything into a folder labeled simply Evidence. There was nothing illegal yet, but there were cracks, enough for leverage, enough to expose what they were doing if they pushed any further. For the first time, I felt powerless. That evening, Mom knocked on my door. "You're being dramatic. This is what's best for the family." Family. The word tasted bitter. I didn't open the door. I didn't answer. Silence, I realized, could be louder than rage. And if Chloe truly wanted the house, she was going to discover something very important. Ownership. Real ownership comes with consequences she wasn't ready for. 2 days later, the house felt unfamiliar, as if every wall, every floorboard had learned to breathe without me. My boxes were gone from the hallway. Mom had moved them to the garage, neatly stacked like trash waiting for pickup. Chloe's car was nowhere to be seen, which meant she was out filming or aligning her energies somewhere in the city. Dad pretended to be busy in the backyard, trimming hedges that didn't need trimming. The whole place felt staged, like they were preparing for a show I wasn't part of. But I wasn't preparing to leave. I was preparing to end the performance altogether. That afternoon, I received the confirmation email I'd been waiting for. It wasn't dramatic, just a short message verifying the legal consultation I'd requested and summarizing the rights I had regarding the home. The wording was clinical, almost cold, but to me it read like oxygen. For once, the law I used to protect everyone else was finally protecting me. As the sun dropped behind the rooftops, a car rolled up the driveway. Chloe stepped out wearing a pastel dress that looked like it belonged on a lifestyle magazine cover. She carried a stack of folders under her arm and walked up the steps with the confidence of someone who believed the world existed to applaud her. When she opened the front door, she didn't even notice me standing at the far end of the hall. She was too busy talking into her phone. "Day 1 of the transition," she said brightly. "This place is going to be incredible once the new flooring comes in. And wait till you see the meditation loft." She stopped mid-sentence when her eyes met mine. "Oh," she said, lowering her phone. "You're still here." Still here, in my childhood home, in the place I kept running while she floated around like it owed her something. I didn't respond. She rolled her eyes slightly. "Look, Meg, I know this is hard for you, but Mom and Dad are right. I have plans, real plans. This house has potential that your life just doesn't require. You don't need it. I do." The cruelty wasn't in what she said. It was in how casually she said it, as if she were commenting on the weather. "You think this house is yours?" I said quietly. "It is. Mom said." "Mom said," I repeated, cutting her off. "Not the law." Before she could answer, the front door opened again. Mom walked in carrying a bag of groceries, followed by Dad. Both wore expressions that made my skin crawl, anticipation mixed with self-righteousness. Chloe straightened as if backup had arrived. "Mom," she said, "can you please explain to Megan that this—" But Mom wasn't listening to her. Her attention was fixed on me. "Why are you still here?" she asked flatly. "We told you to have everything out today." I held her gaze. "And I told you nothing." Dad stepped forward. "We don't have time for this, Megan. We have appointments coming up. People are expecting access to the house. You need to move your things so Chloe can start." "Start what?" I asked. Chloe exhaled loudly. "Her business, Megan. My business. I have investors. I have commitments. I can't get anything going while you're still lingering." Lingering as if I were mold on the ceiling. Mom set the grocery bag down hard on the counter. "This is ridiculous. Be an adult for once. Just pack your things and leave peacefully." Peacefully. Amazing how the same people who caused chaos could demand peace when it served them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't let my face change. I simply reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Thin, precise, organized. Before I go anywhere, I said, "You should all see something." Chloe crossed her arms. "Oh God, are you really doing this?" "What, Megan? What could you possibly show us that matters?" I opened the folder. Inside were printed records, property notes, communication logs, emails Chloe had drafted, Mom's handwritten plans for redistributing space, and a letter verifying that no legal transfer of ownership had occurred and that any attempt to forcibly remove a resident without proper notice or cause was unlawful. The room shifted. Chloe's confidence flickered. Mom's hand tightened on the counter. Dad stopped pretending to be unimpressed. "This," I said calmly, "is everything you've been planning without me. All the documents you left lying around or tried to shuffle past me, all the evidence that you were preparing to push me out long before you had the nerve to say it." Mom's face hardened. "You don't understand what we're doing. Chloe needs, I repeated softly. "That's always the phrase, isn't it?" Dad stepped in. "You're twisting things. We're not villains. We're trying to build a legacy." "By kicking out your own daughter?" I asked. Silence. Chloe swallowed. "It's not personal, Meg. You just don't fit the vision." Vision. That word landed sharper than any insult. I placed the final sheet on the counter. "This is a formal notice stating that I am a legal resident of this home and cannot be removed on your whim. Any attempt to do so without proper legal procedure could constitute harassment and unlawful eviction." Dad scoffed. "That's dramatic." "No," I said. "That's the law you've depended on me to understand for 12 years. The law you assumed I wouldn't use for myself." Chloe looked pale now. "So what? You're staying forever?" "No," I said. "I'm leaving, but not on your timeline." Mom's voice cracked. "You can't do this! People are coming tomorrow. We promised." "That's not my problem," I said. For the first time, Chloe looked genuinely unsettled. Her voice dropped. "Meg, you're going to ruin everything." I stepped closer, not threatening, just final. "I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped you from ruining me." The silence that followed wasn't like before. It wasn't the silence of resignation. It was the silence of a power shift so clean, so undeniable, that they didn't know how to breathe through it. And then came the knock. 3 firm taps. Dad opened the door, expecting a delivery or a neighbor. Instead, a woman in a navy blazer stepped inside, holding a small folder of her own. She introduced herself professionally, calmly, and handed my parents a packet containing an official notice regarding property disputes, documentation inquiries, and pending evaluations that required all renovations, business preparations, and occupancy changes to be halted until reviewed. Chloe's mouth fell open. "What does this mean?" "It means," the woman said politely, "nothing in this home can proceed until certain matters are clarified. No new occupants, no business activity, no restructuring of rooms. Everything is frozen." Mom looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. "What did you do?" she whispered. "Prepared," I said. "Just like I told you." Chloe's voice wavered. "But people are coming tomorrow. What am I supposed to tell them?" I met her eyes. "Tell them the truth." And that was when Chloe realized she had never truly understood her certainty. For the first time, she understood that her confidence wasn't protection. It was a costume. And now she was standing there without it. Mom sank into a chair. Dad rubbed his forehead, muttering about consequences. Chloe stared at the papers as if they were written in a language she had never learned. The house, our house, felt different again, but this time it wasn't unfamiliar because I was being pushed out. It was unfamiliar because for the first time, I wasn't the one being controlled. I was the one setting the terms. The house stayed unnervingly quiet after the woman left, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Mom paced in the kitchen, whispering frantic calculations under her breath. Dad retreated to the backyard, pretending to rake leaves that didn't exist. Chloe shut herself in her old bedroom and called anyone who would listen, trying to spin a story that no longer had an audience. By the next morning, the fallout had already begun. Chloe's investors backed out as soon as they heard there were legal complications. The renovations she bragged about online were suddenly impossible. Her followers noticed the shift in her tone, the hesitation in her posts, and within hours, the comments turned sharp. She had built her brand on confidence and clarity. Now she couldn't promise either. Mom avoided me completely, moving through the house like a ghost. Dad tried to negotiate, asking if there was some way to smooth things over. But for once, I didn't offer solutions. That wasn't my role anymore. 2 days later, I packed my things. Not because they forced me out, but because I finally chose to leave. I signed a lease on a small apartment across the city, a place with clean walls and no history clinging to the corners. As I set my last box down, a strange, peaceful quiet settled over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't fixing anything. I wasn't bracing for the next demand. I was simply free. I still think about that house sometimes. The chipped banister, the sunlit hallway, and the version of me who tried so hard to earn a place there. But walking away didn't break me. It finally made room for the life I was meant to build. Justice didn't come from shouting or revenge. It came from choosing myself, setting boundaries, and letting the truth speak louder than loyalty ever did. And if any part of my story feels familiar to you, you're not alone. Share your experience in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next.